Let's take a look at some charts on 1 inch, the DEX aggregator for Brave New Coin. So 1 inch kind of sits on top of all of the other DEXs in the ecosystem, swaps in the ecosystem. They're all sort of intermingled as a part of one another in the woven fabric we know as DeFi, which, if we're being honest with ourselves, the main purpose of currently is speculation, although that may certainly evolve over time. But what 1 inch allows you to do, much like 0x and a few of the other DEX aggregators, liquidity aggregators, is attempt to get the best price for any asset or any swap that you're looking to buy or sell. They have the classic AMM model as well. They have everything that all the other DEXs have. They have a token as of Christmas last year. They airdropped more tokens a few weeks ago, which wasn't as bearish for price as I thought it was going to be. I don't know too much about the roadmap or about the coin release schedule, but the general idea is the same as it is with all other DeFi stuff right now. If ETH fees can remain low, if they can decrease, DeFi can bloom even further, take off even further, bring more people into the fold. From a microtransactions perspective, increase activity in the trading realm, that sort of thing. So they also have a DAO, which was previously Mooniswap. Very interesting names in the ETH community. But we can look at the DAO, we can look at the liquidity mining, we can look at governance, we can look at the pools, we can look at the farming that's active previously. All of this is to encourage people to provide liquidity, to encourage trading, transactions, that sort of thing on DEXs, on aggregators. It's all sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy that feeds into itself. If you look at some of the volume and liquidity metrics, that certainly has waxed and waned through mid-February. Again, a lot of this was fee-based on ETH. So if ETH fees are at infinity, you're going to see DEX usage decline. If we look at Dune Analytics and we look at the metrics for all of the DEXs collectively, again, sort of getting a snapshot of where the ecosystem is comparatively to where it has been over the past month, week, who's leading who, that sort of thing, how many users. Uniswap still holds most of this volume across all the DEXs. You can see here's Mooniswap here in the brown. DEX aggregators, though, certainly leading is 1 inch over 0x Matcha, which is both 0x. But if you're bullish 1 inch or Uni or Sushi or 0x, ZRX or Curve or Balancer or any of this stuff, Bancor, BNT, Curve, you want to see all of this increase. You just want to see volumes increasing, user numbers increasing. And it's obvious and simple and true. The more people, the more volume, or the more bullish everything's going to be, the more transactions, that sort of thing. It's all really just that simple, honestly, especially relating to trading exclusively. You look at BNB, you look at the activity there, you want new stuff, you want hype, you want cathedrals that are being used by people and not empty. So we can look at the weekly DEX volumes, which have fallen way off. Again, fees on ETH. That's all anybody cares about, because the higher the fees, the lower the transactional activity. That's just how it is. Again, if we look at Mooniswap specifically here, it's kind of faded away into oblivion in relative terms to everybody else. But for 1 inch, I'm less concerned with the Mooniswap volume and more concerned with just the entire ecosystem health in aggregate. So again, everything exploded in February, fees went up, and now we're early March here, but I highly doubt we will see a March like we saw February as far as volume is concerned, just because of fees. I really don't expect things to really pop off until Uniswap version 3, because they are the biggest gas guzzler on chain. And if the exchanges collectively the DEXs specifically, can clean up their act from a transaction cost perspective, then that just opens up the chain for more activity. If we look at transaction stats for the token, specifically 1 inch, the token, so it got airdropped December 23rd, 25th, somewhere in there. And overall, the transactional activity has been minimal. For the most part, if you have 1 inch, you're not really transacting in it greatly, to a great degree, to a great manner. You don't necessarily need it to do anything specifically, unless you are liquidity mining or something like that. So it's definitely a niche coin at the moment, if you're involved with 1 inch at all. If we look at the total transaction volume, that's also been declining since February. So again, everything up and to the right, you want to see everything increasing, bullish, more activity, that sort of thing. thought it was interesting. I was looking at the time held as well. So it looks like people are mostly holding 1 inch. You'd have to compare this to the initial airdrop numbers. But if we look at the total less than 1 month holders, it looks like it's increasing from, I'm looking at weighted average time held, weekly to 2 weeks. So this is still early stages in this because it just got released like 3 months ago. So it's hard to really like read into any of this stuff. But if you're a believer in 1 inch token price, then you're hoping that people are holding this for whatever reason and not necessarily just selling the airdrop immediately, which historically happens with any airdrop, because as people get a windfall, they just want to turn it over and realize those gains basically. So definitely keep an eye on how long people are holding this for. Are they holding it for multiple months? Are they holding it for a day, 2 days? Odds are if you're buying 1 inch, you're doing it for liquidity mining. If you didn't already get some initially from the initial airdrops. And if we look at the total value locked in 1 inch, they are sort of the middle of the pack down here at around 21, rank 21 overall by total USD value locked. I don't think it necessarily makes sense for them to be at the top of this list if they aren't like a primary DEX. They are more of an aggregator than anything, a router. So I wouldn't necessarily expect them to be at the top. If that's the case, if they aren't doing their own thing uniquely that's independent, if they're more of a collection of services across the other exchanges. And I have to use the bank because DeFi Pulse and 1 inch have a tiff between them and they don't get along very well. If we hone in on these DEX numbers a little bit, again, looking at the bank specifically and not doing analytics, if we look at the specific DEXs that are sort of the leading DEXs, 1 inch actually pairs up pretty favorably relative to everybody else, even though all of these are independent as far as what they do and what they're good for, what they're known for. I like to see average users for DEXs very high. I like to see volume very high. So they certainly aren't just dirtling in the dark. They are definitely coexisting quite well amongst their peers. I don't expect them to disappear anytime soon. Looking at Google Trends, which may or may not be useful, but you can see Google Trends had this baseline last year and then kind of exploded in December, January, or recursion in February, and then sort of dropping off. So again, kind of what you're seeing in price, what you're seeing in DEXs across the board, fees across the board. If we look at the 1 inch technicals, the 5200 EMA on the 4-hour monthly pivots, VPVR, volume RSI. So late January, February, we had this floor at around $5, $4.50. We're now below that floor. So the very basic lizard brain trading mentality is that if we get above that again, we should turn that into support. At least you want to see that once again turn into support. So that's really the big level I'd be watching, is that $4.50, $5 level. You can see the volume spike there as well. Very similar to early on in January, December, where there was a bit of a ceiling. We broke above that ceiling, retested that ceiling, and then went off again. That's kind of what you want to see here. If you think this is a ascending triangle at around 455 as far as horizontal resistance, the expectation is if it's able to regain that level, it's certainly going to retest the all-time high. So as with any DeFi type coin, I like just psychological resistance levels. If it can break 5, I like 10. If it can break 10, I like 15. Kind of the same for any coin. As far as support is concerned, maybe 250, maybe 2. I mean, there's not a lot of volume historically here. Again, not a lot of data. This just got released in December, late December. So there's not a lot to really look at here from a historical perspective. Tons of volume, obviously, in the dollar range. You see this again when you get airdrops. Most people just want to sell everything. I think their airdrop was timed well, not from a taxes perspective, but just a general DeFi ecosystem perspective. They probably didn't time this for January because nobody really knew what was going to happen, in the future. But it just so happened that everything DeFi realm really exploded in January, February. So the airdrop token price benefited from that immensely. And it wasn't just months and months of selling off. So again, you saw some of that selling off with the airdrop a few weeks ago, the second airdrop. But overall, the price reaction, I don't think, was as bad as it could have been. Based on trend, this may flip the 4-hour 5200 bullish again. That would be another sign that this is ready for higher highs. I'd be watching this monthly pivot at 440, it looks like. This is a big big level here, 440, 450, $5. And it may not just push through all of that. Initially, it may need to reconsolidate like it did previously, but that would be the level I'd be watching for higher highs, certainly. If we look at the cloud, the 4-hour cloud looks like it wants to possibly flip bullish again over the next few days to a week. If this can get above the 4-hour cloud, then again, that's go time for the trend. It's very likely that if this doesn't make a lower low, it's going to definitely return to that $5, $6 region and see if there's any sellers in the, or sorry, any buyers in that area. And when we compare this to everything else, like uni, sushi, rising tide raises all boats, and there's certainly rotation trades there. So if uni and sushi are bullish, I expect 1-inch to be bullish, curve to be bullish. All this stuff acts collectively together very well. The correlations are very high. If we look at 1-inch ETH on the 4-hour, it looks like it hit this 0.0022 level once again as far as the previous floor. So if you're waiting to long based on 1-inch ETH, you'd be waiting for prices above the 4-hour cloud again. You can see how it just kind of sold off, rose up, sold off. So it hasn't really been able to establish higher highs that it can hold on to since late January. But this may change if fees on ETH go down. Again, it's all very simple, I think, with the DEXs as far as the analysis is concerned. Then lastly, on 1-inch BTC, very similar to the 1-inch ETH chart, you have a bit of a double bottom here, potential Adam Eve on higher time frames. You can see the V here and the U. So if this can get above 10,000 sats psychological resistance, if it can get above the 4-hour cloud, it certainly looks ready for a bullish reversal pattern based on trend metrics. So overall, I think as an aggregator, the 1-inch DEX is positioned quite well. I think their airdrop, despite being terrible for tax reasons, was released at a highly advantageous time amongst everything else and how it played out, just because normally airdrops sell off for months or weeks initially as people just want to cash in, but it really helped that everything else was rising at the time when the airdrop was released. The transactions for 1-inch aggregator are rising or look like they're rising. The 1-inch token stats are sort of mediocre. Technicals look neutral, maybe as neutral as you're going to get, as you're going to see, and it's definitely a wait and see on the BTC pair, the ETH pair, and the USD pair as far as where this could be headed. But as with anything else in DeFi, I like simple psychological resistance, in this case $5, $10, that sort of thing. So let me know what you think about 1-inch. Let me know what I missed. 1-inch is fairly new, so I'm sure I missed something. And happy